Most people don't even realize that they're in a game, and that's why they never win. Because reality isn't random, it's structured. And once you understand the structure, you start winning the game of reality. You see, most people think that reality is external. It's events, it's situations, it's circumstances, it's everything in the physical world. But at the end of the day, reality really is internal, right? If you think about it, your internal world is directly reflecting into the external world, right? And that's how you're showing up. And so that is the most important thing that you need to understand if you want to win the game of reality. Think about it. Ask yourself, what if these whole entire events that are happening in my life, these circumstances, these situations, what if they are not necessarily negative, but I've decided to attach a negative meaning to them, right? Because you don't experience reality directly. You experience your interpretation of it. Every struggle that you've had is because you've misunderstood the situation, the game, the premise, right? What you're actually needing to do to get ahead. So it all comes down to the lens that you are deciding to look life through. You could be looking at life through a positive, impactful, abundance, progressive type of lens. Or you can be looking at life as, I'm a victim, this happens to me, poor me, nothing ever good happens to me, right? It's really a decision. For example, let's say you're sitting down and you're playing chess, okay? Once you stop and you think about like all the different strategic moves that you can move and do, and you can move a pawn a certain way, the king can move another way. Once you're really thinking about all of that and you're thinking in the lens of, I know how to play this game, and so I can win. And there's always a way to win, right? You think about these grand chess masters that spend years learning how to become the best of the best, right? They spend all this time learning all the different ways to play the game, right? And this is where you need to also understand that there's multiple different ways to play this game, but the very first thing that really is the most important component of it all is you need to change the lens that you are looking life through, because that right there in and of itself will have a significant and massive substantial impact in your life. And so let's look at the formula for reality. Okay, reality is about inputs, right, that come in, the data, everything that's happening in your life, the circumstances, they get interpreted, okay, in terms of your lens of how you're seeing reality. Then they go through your identity, and your identity is really centered around who you think you are, who you see yourself as, right? And then they get filtered into your actions. So if the way that you interpret it is positive or negative, it's going to go into your identity, and then that's going to reinforce your identity, and then you're going to take certain actions, right? And then you're going to get a certain outcome. So this is the most important factor here, the lens. So let's look at the architecture behind experience, right? Because at the end of the day, we're interpreting everything through a lens that we have decided to look at things through, right? So let's break this down. So number one, we have the inputs, okay? This is everything that's coming into your life, any type of experience, circumstance, data itself in terms of, what are people saying about you? What are the things that are happening in your life? How you are reacting to them? These are life events, situations, feedback, different people, right, that are in your actual environment and, showing up as data, right? This is not either good or bad. They're just events that are happening, right? Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you are going through something tough, maybe mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it may be, right? This is all just data that is coming in to your awareness, okay? And then number two, this is your interpretation, okay? This is the lens that you are essentially seeing everything through, and that you have decided, okay, this is really important here. We're always creating our life, whether we are consciously aware of it or not, right? You're either unconsciously creating your life or consciously. And for me, I would rather consciously create my life so that I know what I want to achieve, and that I'm deliberately creating an identity and steps and actions to actually make that happen, right? So this is the filter that your mind applies, how you are viewing things, how you've decided to see things. And This is all either done unconsciously or consciously, but more often than not, this is being done unconsciously because you're not aware of what's going on, right? You're just kind of like going through life and thinking that things are happening to you, but at the end of the day, they're happening for you. The next one is identity, okay? This is the player that you have decided to be, okay? And think about identity in the sense of who you are to the world, okay? How you are showing up. Think about it this way. Let's say that you are a friend of yours, and let's say you were to step into their mindset, step into their frame, worldview. How would you be showing up, right? And if you observed yourself in terms of how are you showing up? Who is Juan, or who are you? That's where you can really look at yourself objectively, because identity is really all about how you're showing up in the world, and it all starts internally. The beliefs, the views, the different things that have happened in your life that have led you to act this certain way, to hold these certain beliefs and trauma. So all of that is your identity. And then there's the action and the outcome. Okay? Your actions are always going to get you a certain outcome, right? You are taking in data, circumstances, situations, whatever it may be. You are interpreting them through a lens that you have decided to use, whether it be positive or negative, or your current situation. And then that's ran through your identity in terms of how you're showing up to the world, how you see yourself, who you see yourself as. And then that creates action and outcomes, right? That's where you are then taking a certain action or not taking a certain action, you're getting a certain outcome, right? Let's say that you are somebody who has gone through, a tough upbringing, right? And now you are looking at anytime somebody has a negative feeling towards you or is upset with you as like they are trying to hurt you, trying to cause harm to you, when in reality it may be something you said, something you did, right? But you have chosen to look at that situation from that lens because of all your past upbringing, right? But at the end of the day, the interpretation is really a choice. And so this is the loop. It's consistently happening where you have inputs, you're interpreting them, they're filtered through your identity of how you see yourself, and then you're taking action, and then you're getting a certain outcome. And maybe you're not taking any action, you're getting an outcome as well, right? So this is really how the game of reality operates, right? Is you have these four components that are all part of how the game is being operated, and you need to become aware of this. And once you do, then you're able to start stepping outside of yourself and look at yourself holistically and objectively. And most people are trying to change their actions instead of trying to change their player, right? You learn this new technique of how to, become more productive, or how to stop procrastination, or whatever it may be. But then after a while, you start to realize that, this isn't really who I am, and there's friction there, and then you stop doing whatever it is that you're doing, whatever habit that you started to create, right? Because the identity is misaligned. There's no alignment there in who you are and what you're doing. There are 3 losing strategies that most people play. And this is how most people unconsciously lose the game. So let's go over these. So losing strategy number 1, okay? This is really, really important here in terms of understanding what people are doing naturally and probably what you're doing naturally. Number 1 is a survival, okay? The survival strategy of thinking that, what if this happens? What if that happens? I don't want to do too much. I don't want to showcase myself too much out there because I don't want to get judged. I don't want to get looked at a certain way, right? There's this fear. There's this ability where you don't really want to cause too much trouble. You don't want to be a pain or a nuisance to somebody. And so you kind of stay small, right? You are in this survival where you just want to do just enough to survive. You're never really looking at things from an abundance standpoint where you're able to see things for more than they really are, right? Big picture perspective. And especially when it comes to emotions, right? You're avoiding emotions as they come through. If you're feeling sad, you'll go out in your party and maybe you'll drink, or you do, drugs, or whatever it may be. You'll do things that will numb your feeling, right? That you're going through, and you have to experience those emotions. That's the thing about emotions, is they're challenging, they're tough, but you need to experience them. You need to acknowledge them, and almost treat them like a little child. This is the first one here, survival mode. You're just trying to get by. You just want to stay afloat. You're not trying to do too much. You're just kind of living life, and there's no real direction. But as long as you're surviving, you're good. And then number two, the noise addiction. This is also a big factor here, noise, okay? This is where you are doing things to overcompensate. If you're consuming content, you're consuming so many hours of content and you're not doing anything. You want to get everything perfect. You want to make sure that every single little thing is aligned exactly how it's supposed to, and the stars are aligned before you're even able to make a move, because you think that you're not ready. And let me tell you this, you're never going to be 100% ready, right? But it's about taking action, and it's about doing what you need to do regardless of if you think it's 100% or not, because typically 60 to 70% is really where you need to be at, okay, in terms of understanding something to take action, right? If you're at 100%, you've waited too long and maybe now you're behind. And then the problem with that is that if you're doing that on a consistent basis in terms of taking action only when you are 100%, or you're over consuming content, you know, negative content like the media or the news or whatever, then it's just going to bring down your whole entire awareness and your frequency, right? And so the losing strategy number three, okay, this is identity stagnation, okay, stagnation. This is where you are not fully aligned yet with your future version of yourself, and you're not asking questions to understand what is your current state, right? What version am I operating from? What am I currently doing? How am I showing up? And taking that information objectively, right? You're not here to judge yourself. You're here to just become aware of who you are, how you're acting, right? Because a lot of times your actions are not going to be you, right? You are an identity in terms of somebody that shows up in a certain way and does certain things. And so your actions are not always going to be who you are, right? You think about it. When you label yourself as stupid, you've not taken on that identity. Versus if you say, I did this stupid thing, right? Then it's separate from your identity. So really think about how you are communicating with yourself and the words that you're using, because words are powerful. So these three different losing strategies are really important for you to become aware of and notice, right? So that you can move on to the next step. Okay, so now let's talk about how to win the game of reality. There's 4 core strategies. First winning strategy is becoming aware of the game board itself, okay? The game itself, okay? Because awareness allows you to understand what's really going on, how things are moving and progressing. So number 1, okay, awareness of game, okay? You have to understand that this is a game that's being played, okay? And that this is like a chessboard. If you're not aware of what's going on, the loops, the patterns, then how are you going to fix it, right? How are you going to, let's say, win a game? If you're playing like a video game, right? Think about it. You go through a game, you go through a level, and you start to realize what are the patterns, what are the different enemies or the people that you need to fight or the obstacles that you need to go through to get to the end of the level, right? You need to become aware, and oftentimes it takes you going through that level multiple times so that you know what happens in terms of, at this checkpoint, this is what's going on. I need to do A, B, and C, right? Or at this checkpoint over here, I know that somebody's coming from around the corner, so I need to duck. So it's really about becoming aware of how the game is being played currently, right? And understanding that awareness allows you to really be able to acknowledge, understand, and really look at what's going on so that you can make the proper adjustments. And then winning strategy number 2 is the identity upgrade, okay? Identity upgrade. Identity is really the biggest and most important component and factor of it all, okay? You can't outperform your current identity. You see, you don't win by forcing outcomes. You win by becoming the version of you where those outcomes become natural, right? So in order for you to upgrade your identity, you first need to become aware of what's going on, the patterns, the identity that you're currently experiencing, and ask questions in the sense of, who is this new version of me? What do they do? How do they act? When situations arise that are negative or that are unfortunate, how do they react to the situation? Do they understand it for what it is? Or do they get upset? Do they break down? Do they avoid it all? Do they go out and they party? Do they go out and just drink and try to avoid the situation? Or do they acknowledge it? Do they face it head on and say, hey, you know what? It is what it is, right? There's nothing much that I can do. Like, this is one of the biggest things that has worked for me in terms of being able to upgrade identity in a very quick way. You need to understand that situations are going to happen to you in life, and how you choose to look at them or how they're going to look back at you. In the sense of this, if you think that something's a big deal, guess what? It's going to be a big deal. If something happens and you acknowledge it for what it is, you know what? It sucks. It's unfortunate. I feel bad. I feel sad. Okay, feel that. But don't let it overrun you. Don't let it overtake you. Just acknowledge it for what it is and then move through it, right? Because what can you do, right? If it's something where, let's say you got in a car accident, your car's totaled, or your car's in the shop, what can you do, right? You can take your car to the shop. It sucks. It's unfortunate. It's going to cost you some money, but you're still alive, right? And what are you going to, go and break yourself down and, lay in the fetal position in the corner of your room, right? Like, it is what it is. It happened. What can you do? What can you control, right? And if you sit there and you worry about it, what is it really doing for you? It's really doing nothing but just giving you more stress, right? Giving you more tension, more cortisol, right? So you need to understand that things are what they are. And the more that you're able to understand that and acknowledge things for what they are, instead of trying to keep worrying about something that you have no control over, right? The better that you're going to be off overall. And it's going to be easier for you to upgrade that identity, because that version of you, that next version of you, right, isn't worrying about these things, right? They are accepting them for what they are, acknowledging them, experiencing them, and even feeling the emotions associated with them, but they're not letting them affect their life, right? How they're showing up in terms of the energy, right? Because if you let that affect you, then that affects everything that you do, how you show up, right? There's this tension there. Like, man, I can't believe I got into that accident. I can't believe so-and-so hit me. I can't believe. So you're dragging that into your life, and that's affecting everything that you're doing, okay? Winning strategy number 3, stillness over noise, okay? Now, stillness is something that is truly important in terms of when you're going from one identity to the other, because this is where you're doing your reflection. This is where you're acknowledging your situation for what it is. This is where you're stepping outside yourself and evaluating yourself from a third person perspective, without looking at yourself from a lens of like, man, what are you doing? Like judging yourself, right? It's like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm showing up. And it sucks. It's unfortunate, but I'm here and I'm acknowledging it, right? And a lot of times it comes with just like sitting there and getting into a meditative state, right? And just acknowledging, becoming aware of what you're doing, how you're doing it, how you're showing up, right? But oftentimes we always want to have something in front of us, right? We always want to be doing something, taking up our attention, right? Think about all these different games that are on cell phones now, like all these different like Tetris games, or like, conquer, different locations. I've seen all these little video games on phones now, and where people are doing those because they're bored or they need to pass time. Like, how much time do we actually spend just sitting there thinking and like clear mind and just kind of thinking about like how we're showing up, how life is, what's going on, right? Like sitting there with just pure silence. And so that's where reflection comes. That's where acknowledgement, understanding comes. So that's a truly important component of being able to, get to that next level of identity. And then the winning strategy number 4 is action from alignment, okay? Action from alignment. So this is where you are doing things, right? You're acting in terms of your actions from a place of pure alignment internally. Like, you know who you are, right? You feel it, you understand it, and then you have full clarity into what you need to do, right? Now when you're doing things, it doesn't feel like it's off or there's a little bit of tension there or friction. You're doing things and it just feels right, because aligned action bends reality and misaligned action just fights it. And so you want to be in full alignment when you're taking action, right? Where there's no friction, no resistance, because reality mirrors your internal state, right? This is all just a reality of your internal self, right? Of how you are internally. So reality mirrors your internal state. Okay? Reality mirrors your internal. How you show up internally, how you think about yourself, your thinking processes, your awareness, your understanding, all of that gets reflected into the external world. Okay? And so once you change your identity internally, which then changes how you look at things, and then it changes your actions in terms of what you do or don't do, and then you get a change of outcome. Because when you change the player, the board rearranges itself, right? Now you go from playing chess and being a pawn to being a king, right? Where you have a lot of power, right? You have the most power in terms of, yeah, you may only be able to move a certain way, but you have clarity, right? You have understanding, you have awareness, and you truly understand the real power that you truly wield, right? So reality really isn't just what it is, right? Reality is how you think about it, how you see it, the lens and the perspective that you give it. Because think about it, you can have the same exact two people in one reality, and they can be going through the same exact thing, but one can have a positive outlook and one can have a negative outlook, and the reality is exactly the same, right? In terms of the events that are happening, but the reality is different for each individual because they have chosen to see it from that lens, right? And then once they see it from that lens, then it starts to actually reflect back in the real world, right? If internally they're thinking that, hey, I can never do this, I'm never enough, guess what? The world is going to reflect that back to them in reality, because first you need the internal aligned, the identity, and then that gets reflected back into the real world, right? Because guess what? If you think that you're not good at a certain subject or a certain area, guess what? You're not going to be, because the world is going to reflect that back to you. If you see yourself as somebody who is warm, who is empathetic, who is joyful, who is attractive, right? All of these different things that are positive and that are great traits, then guess what? People are going to see you as that because you're going to show up as that, right? So once you realize that everything really is all a mirror, this is all a game, and you get to decide consciously how you want to play it, how you want to show up, that's when everything changes, and that's how you win the game of reality.